multifamily is at this place where it needs more activity. It's just like, let's get the train rolling. We need more review volume coming in to really see what it looks like and what residents are saying. But so much of the resident ecosystem, the resident base, is not participating.
This isn't just about improving margin. A lot of times just adding AI is about let's cut costs. We also need to improve operations and improve what we're doing. And so that's where, yes, we're going to make things easier by centralizing all of this and having one team, but we're not going to lose the human touch, because there is something to be said for that.
Okay, welcome to the Digible Dudes podcast. I'm David.
I'm Reed.
Reed, today we're talking about Widewail.
Wail.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got in front of you on that. Yep.
At the end of the episode, we finally learned what it came from.
Yep. Got to leave that as a cliffhanger. Got to listen to this episode. If you want to know how they came up with the name, it's one of the better ones.
I was going to start asking you about like what. Don't do
it. Don't do it. I already know you're gonna tip it, give it away.
All right. Well, you gotta get like an hour into the episode or more.
I thought it was 3 hours. Is it only an hour that they have to wait? Okay,
hour 10 maybe. But we did get the story of like where it came from, which I appreciated that they shared, because I think they may not have otherwise.
That's good that they knew it.
But Widewail, I became aware of them maybe 6 months ago or so. Their rep management, which it seems like they're okay being called, and they started in automotive and then brought it to multifamily. And the big difference for them, it sounds like, is that they are very service first and then tech, and not trying to make tech solve everything. So many of the other providers in the rep management space are, they give you a platform and they're like, make sure you log into this every day and respond to this stuff and run campaigns to generate more reviews and so on and so forth. And these folks are taking kind of the opposite approach. It's more white glove, and say that's our differentiator. We still have a platform, lots of data. We have data scientist people that will, look into your reviews and tell you about the sentiment and what's really going on. But outside of that, we'll manage it for you.
Yeah. I don't know that you got your contrarian question in or your hot take. I don't feel like you did.
We touched a little bit, but not really.
I'm asking because I feel like their business model is almost contrarian or a hot take. If you think about the era we're in, where everybody is just furiously racing to AI, their whole like organization and their offering, they're saying no. We're actually going to maintain a service, human first approach to this, and I think it's even more bold, personally, that they're doing this in a space that is, I don't know how to describe it, but exponentially picking up pace with AI in the form of ChatGPT. So just, conversations, responses, things like that. And at some point, we directly hit that with them, and how they're thinking about that, how concerned, maybe is a simpler way of putting it, is that going to disrupt what they're trying to do. And I thought that Jake had some great call outs, and not necessarily a cautionary tale per se of ChatGPT and reviews or whatnot, but just like some really valuable distinctions I think that people need to hear as they're thinking through human versus GPT in this domain. So I find, and maybe we'll see more of this. What we hear often, I forget who it was. I think it was it was a property management company. That Jasmine works at. GID. When we had dinner with them at RecCon, they said high touch, high tech, high touch.
That's right. Yeah.
And they were like, that's kind of our mantra. Is we're going to bring great technology, but we're also going to bring great people.
Yeah.
And, so, and frankly, isn't that Digible? I mean, it's so much of who we are is how we position ourselves is this great combination of service and tech.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'd say we're a part of that too, or if they're just saying, no, we're more human, more service. But that would be so fascinating if you think in the next 5 to 10 years, how many people hold on to that value prop or have to let go of it. or just go all in on tech. Because I feel like you have the hybrids, you have what might feel like a little bit more old school that are super service and human, forward. And then, of course, what most of what you read about and hear about are the ultra tech forward, AI driven companies.
Yeah, I think there's room for all of it. But it's kind of like your Jeff Bezos, like Washington Post. They'll still print the newspaper in 100 years, right? And so I think there's room for all of it. It just, you need to make a choice as a company what positioning you're going to pick versus trying to do it all. Be like, we have great service and the best technology. So I think that makes it really confusing. Your high tech, high touch from Jasmine, though, I think would be great framing for someone like them, because even with Widewail, even if they still go to market with service first, it doesn't mean they couldn't use something like OpenAI to help them generate the responses, but a human reviews it, make sure that it doesn't start to sound too similar, too templated, like that type of thing. So it's almost like who cares how it's executed as long as it's executed well,
Right.
except for some customers have a big fear of the tech because they've been burned by automated, like, mail merge templates on review responses before. And so they'd rather know a person's doing it. And then if that person's using something else, and that's fine too. It's just great. You have eyes on, right? And then if something bad happens, you can say, like, I thought you had eyes on. Like, what happened here? It's like, yeah, we missed it, or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's interesting about, like, as a differentiator. And I like the differentiator. It's kind of like, I think of, we just went to New York and visited one of Nicole's, her roommate from college, and she's living in a building now that has a doorman. And in some ways, you'd be like, why do you need a doorman at this point? Like, there's smart locks, there's whatever. But for her, it's a big selling point that he knows her, that when she leaves the building, like if it's like 9 o'clock at night, he's like, where are you going? And when should I expect you back? Not to let her in, but more because he wants, she's a single woman. It's like, provides safety.
That's
to
great.
be like, okay, if you're not back in 30 minutes, I'll give you a buzz or something.
Yeah.
Whereas I would be like, hey, buddy, you shouldn't care that I'm going to Schlotchke's right now.
Right. That's none of your business.
Yeah.
So I have a late night snacking problem.
I do have a late night snacking problem, but he shouldn't care. But for her and the positioning for that property, it makes a lot of sense. So I think, there's going to be something for everyone. Just make your choice as a company.
Totally. Well, the other value that I got, and I think we're, I guess, soon to be exposed to a lot more of it, is what a priority they put on the qualitative kind of insights, data information that they're getting as a result of these reviews, which I think is vastly underserved in our industry. Just there's different examples of this, and I've been, I'll say, most critical of, all the chatbots, but what are they really doing to leverage that raw data, that sentiment, those questions, the Q&A that happens in the course of a chat thread, or it's shorter, but between a resident review and a response. So I love that they're doing this. They said they're going to release some 3 series. I think it's 3 series, right? Or 3 events. And the first one is the voice of the resident. Really trying to share out some of those nuggets that can come from reviews that operators might be missing if they're not paying attention.
Yeah, and I think, like, one thing that they flex to me here, the other rep management folks I've talked to have been like, I build this great platform. You can do all these things that you want, build campaigns, generate, monitor, sentiment, blah, blah, blah. But you are the expert. I'm giving you the cockpit to an F-16 or whatever, right? Now you go fly it. Versus, I like the positioning of, like, look, I'm going to fly the F-16 and it can do whatever you need. And I'll tell you, how to set it up. Like, and I even, like, they have different, like, they show, like, on their website and their material, they have different, like, okay, in Q1, we want to focus on really getting reviews around our quick response time. And in Q2, we want to focus on maintenance or whatever. So you can build campaigns that have different focuses that can lift your overall, I guess, like, what's out there about your property versus just saying, just give me a review. Right. Like, so I like the focus, and, you and I love these kinds of, like, goals, the sort of quarterly objectives, and then move on to the next. So.
Totally. The one last thing I'll highlight to listen in on is just the comparison to auto. So Widewail started in auto, didn't start in multifamily, is expanding out. It's just the opposite. But David, for those that have listened, often will hear your references or mentions to automotive and generally speaking, how much further ahead they are than multifamily. So I think it's great, that we have a tech provider, or I don't know if I should have said service provider, coming from automotive into multifamily to try and help kind of further, I'll say, a mutual purpose or cause that we have to catch the industry up. And one of the things that they talked about was just all the interaction and touch points that automotive has and capitalizes on. I specifically appreciated the mention of service. It's not just during a transaction, but they continue to service these customers with repair, oil changes, whatever, and they're always looking for those opportunities. But in multifamily, it seems like we're not as good at that. We're typically, it's just on a move in, and then you've lost the opportunity. You did mention the finite reality of some of the opportunities that you see with multifamily, but I won't say any more. I just think it's it's another good piece to listen in on if you're trying to think differently and kind of waking up to maybe some more interactions or touch points for review generation.
Yeah, I didn't get to this, but I did want to bring this. I think I've told this story before. I definitely have told you before. I don't know if on the air, but when I was a car salesman, about so you have like a 4-star dealership, and your star rating is because I don't know, let's say Jeep or Chrysler doesn't want they don't want a bad brand experience. And so you get star ratings because many customers don't understand that dealerships are independently owned and they're not owned by Chrysler, corporate or whatever. And so they want to give you oh, well, this is if it's a 2-star dealer, not good, right? 4-star dealer, hey, really good. Mm-hmm. And so it's a big deal. And so they coach all of the salespeople through the process of hey, everyone's going to get the scorecard. And it's like if you get 2% bad reviews for the quarter, you lose your star. And to get back to a 4-star rating is really tough. And you remember the story, Emmett?
It's starting to, surface.
So we needed to hit 110 cars for the month, and we were at 109. So it's
now it's definitely starting to hit.
So it was 9 o'clock on last day of the month, and what they start doing is saying call your family members who wants a car. We're wheeling and dealing. So I called my girlfriend at the time.
Was she of age?
She was 18. But
I just meant if they're saying family members.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a license? But go ahead.
No, she had a license. She needed to replace her VW Jetta or whatever. And they were like, hey, look, we'll give you this Crossfire, which was a cool little 2-seat coupe or whatever.
I remember the Crossfire.
And it was supposed to be $32,000 at the time. And this is 2002. And they ended up giving it to her for $19,000. So it was massively discounted just to get the thing, so we could hit our
the number,
110 cars. And but most of this happened with one of the other. I brought her in, and then I stuck her with Craig because Craig was our best salesman, and he was really good at working management to give the deal. So I knew he would get her a better deal than I would. So we split the credit of the car, but that didn't really matter. But then afterwards, she wrote, what was it, 2 weeks later or whatever, we're sitting in our Monday sales meeting, and they hold up a review that's just covered in red, and they're like, whose is this? And I was like, dude, someone's getting lit up. And then they're like, Staley, it's your girlfriend. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, she tore us a new one, and our star rating's at risk. And I was like, and I'm flop sweating now. I'm like, what did she do?
Flop sweating.
And it's well, we closed at 11:45 at night. So it was did your car get washed before handed to you? No. It's well, yeah, it was 11:45 at night. Of course it didn't get washed before it got given to you. So there were all these little things that were all truthful. She was just being it was she was taking a census exam or something, right? It's no. And then, I got torn a new one. And
that's so funny.
I was like, how come Craig's not getting any of this heat? Why is it just me?
Right.
I think they were just amused.
Well, you would have think it would have been a 6-star review from her, getting the car at half off.
Yeah, right.
But instead, because you had to shortcut some stuff.
Yeah. But here's the thing, so where I was going with that is sales people there are super trained to be I need you to leave me a good review. This really depends. Because you don't want to get, just ripped into.
I hate that crap when somebody opens that up to me.
Oh yeah, that
I had that in public storage, and it was this hard pitch on a review. I was like, dude, you need to stop right now.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to turn that into a 1-star if you
I
say
do
anything
struggle
more to me.
with so that is interesting. Like we should, in the future when we have them on, we'll have to ask them like, what's the best way to ask for it from human to human versus the automated text? Because the text will help, but it's different than like turning you off or me off first when they're asking for it. Because I get asked too. And if they say it wrong, I'm like, I'm not going to leave a review, but it makes me I just throw up my defenses.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Don't guilt me into a review.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, anyways, you guys might enjoy this episode. You listened to like an entire episode before this episode, but it's good meeting the Widewail folks, and we got some good tidbits out of them.
For sure.
Okay, we're here with Jake and Katie. Jake, why don't you take it away and introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having us. Nice to be here. Nice to meet y'all. My name is Jake Hughes. I'm the director of marketing at Widewail. We do reputation management services and technology for multifamily. Bit of my background, I started my career at Car Gurus out of Boston. Spent 5 years there. Was a video producer at Car Gurus, worked my way up from entry-level job and ended up producing almost 500 test drive reviews, got to drive a lot of new fancy cars, built a YouTube channel from 0 to 100,000 subscribers, and then moved up here to Burlington and met Widewail. At the time, it was about 7 employees, and I started as the first marketer. And I've sort of kept helm of the team since then over the last 5 years, and we are approaching 60 employees. So a good amount of growth since we started.
Great. Katie.
Awesome. Great to meet you both, and thanks for having us. Katie Ritter. I'm our multifamily lead here at Widewail. I started my career in commercial real estate. I was in leasing in downtown Boston, working for a brokerage firm representing both tenants and landlords. And then I moved back to Vermont and started coaching lacrosse at my alma mater, Middlebury College. So I've had a little bit of an interesting career path from commercial real estate to coaching. And then I wanted to stay in Vermont, but wanted my weekends back a little bit and moved up to Burlington and got in touch with Widewail. A former Middlebury friend was working there, and I started as a BDR on the sales team. I was, I think, sales team member number 4 and employee number 18. And now we're up to, like Jake said, over 60. So it's been quite a fun ride. I've been there for about 3.5 years and was really charged with leaving the automotive space and starting to grow the multifamily space. So we'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure, but started in automotive and then landed a large PM client and was told, all right, Katie, go ahead. let's go see what we can do. So it's been a really fun ride the past couple of years growing this multifamily space.
Katie, how many games did you get thrown out of when you played for your alma mater?
Judging by her temperament, I'm going to say 0.
Katie was an all-American. If you couldn't tell.
Coaching. Yeah. I was throwing clipboards left and right when I was coaching. No.
Okay. So come on, what's the fact? Because Nicole, our third founder, my wife, when she played, I think she got thrown out of like 3 games. But you would never think that, knowing Nicole, but she was getting carded all the time. So
yeah, I Reed nailed it. I have never been thrown out of a game. I will say my sister, who was the grade below me, who I played with, she was probably thrown out of maybe 10 to 15% of the games. Like that was, for whatever reason, that was the sibling that received the aggressive gene.
So she was the Jason Kelsey between the Kelsey brothers. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wait, did you ever get thrown out of a game?
I did.
Really?
Oh.
I don't know this story.
Yeah.
What happened?
I got into 2 fights.
What sport did you play?
I played baseball, basketball, and football. But my senior year was just basketball and baseball.
And what did you get in a fight over in basketball?
A guy like basically almost put me in a chokehold. I don't know if the best way to describe this, but it was on a free throw and ball came off and he like smacked me with his forearm in my neck.
Yeah.
And then we both fell to the floor and he kind of kept it there. And then I got up well, tried to get up and just went after him, and we both got tossed.
Oh, I was going to ask if it was.
And then another time I got thrown out for saying the F-bomb to a referee. That was against God, what's the name of that high school? Anyways,
This wasn't like, hey, said, phenomenal reffing, not that kind of F-bomb, but just fantastic reffing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Believe it or not, I had plenty of people say that, they were worried about me sometimes, like out on the court, just because I got a little carried away with the competitiveness.
You're invested.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go back to Jake. Give us the elevator pitch for Widewail. I don't, because I think of you guys as rep management, but I know that there's a lot of nuance here. So give us the elevator pitch, and then we'll get into like the company start, and then why now multifamily, as Katie was indicating.
Yeah, so we help multifamily groups do a whole bunch of different things with reviews. Generating reviews is number one. So get more reviews in the door, get more engagement from your residents, and put forth the best looking picture of what your community is like. And do that at scale with technology that's easy to do with a small group, centralized. And from the start, we had review response managed services. We have a team here in Vermont that's actually responding to reviews, fingers on keyboards, as my boss likes to say. And they do an amazing job. And they're unique in that we've never tried to solve all problems with technology. We are a services first company and are sort of not using technology to replace the things that are better done by people. And we have technology in place to improve the process around them. So we've got the two core products that help generate and manage reviews, and then some additional products that help businesses build local listings and generate video testimonials from residents as well. Anything you would add on there, Katie?
Yeah, I think generally the start of the business, we focused a lot on what trust means this day and age, and how people don't necessarily trust what the operator or the PMC has to say about living in their communities. We think about our own behavior and we pick up, go look for a new restaurant or a place to live, a car to buy. You're trusting your peers over and their experiences over anything else. And so we spent a lot of time in uncovering what that means and how important it is to activate the voice of your customers, of your residents, because this is your most trusted marketing asset over advertising, over social media, anything else. It's people are trusting the words of your residents. So being able to talk about that and engage in a meaningful way to represent your property in the best light is really important.
So I've got one last thing here before I toss it to Reed. But what if you guys are saying the company? Did you guys say about 5 years old or 6 years old, somewhere in there?
It'll be 6 this summer. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what the impetus was about why starting the company? And I say this because I think of rep management, like review, handling, generation. That kind of thing feels like a commodity at this point. Mm-hmm. And so if 6 years ago, I wouldn't have been like, I need to found a company to compete with whatever, yextrep.com, Chatmeter, whoever, right? So was it more that service component, I guess, Jake, not to feed you, but I mean, right. That was like these other things try to solve everything with technology versus like, we still need a human for it to be a great local business solution, or do you, what could you fill in there for us?
Right. So 6 years ago, I personally wasn't there, but I'll sort of what I've learned over the years is at the time, review response services was not offered by any business. So there was a gap in the market there. And high quality review response services that were done efficiently at a good price was just complete green space. So our founding team took a hold of that, and we did that for, it was 2 years. So 2 years, the first 2 years of the business was just review response. And it was great. I think working a lot in automotive, there was a ton of demand and need to find an outsourced team that was genuinely very good at the job. And a review response team is a trained team of expert writers, which is not necessarily something that all local businesses always have. And there's some nuance and strategy required to do that job well. And the turnover of potentially that job evolving over time are things that are just much more inexpensively handled through a third party. So we took that on. We made it efficient. We did it right. And then from there, we expanded to technology services that helped add more breadth to our platform and solve more problems for our customers.
Okay, cool. Well, Reed, where do you want to take it?
Well, this one is off of what Katie, I think, was talking about when she was mentioning trust, how critical it is in, our consumer buying decisions. I mean, everybody understands that, but how do you build trust is my question. Especially with somebody, I don't know if I'm asking the right question here, but what I appreciated, and I don't know when this happened, David might be able to timestamp it, but when Amazon moved to verified reviews versus, unverified, because it did feel like, and it started to become more apparent to me because of the business that we're in, when I felt like I was seeing a manipulated kind of review. So it was great that they did that, but I still find myself, even with verified now, like feeling like I'm trying to just kind of cut to the real feedback here. And so I'd like you to comment, Katie, or Jake, on how you guys think about that, like kind of the verified versus the unverified, and if that lives anywhere within, we'll ask specifically for multifamily or, part of the roadmap when you're generating reviews. And could you take that a step further? And just by example, it's almost like a trust score for a review versus just making it binary where it's verified or unverified. So I like to, can't help but think about the future. And, if you think about reviews 5-10 years from now, are we going to be any further along than verified or unverified, or kind of what we see today? And, some of that already in the works for Widewail.
Great question. Yeah. So our review gen focus is around pushing folks to these public sites. So thinking Google is a priority a lot because of the algorithm and Google using these reviews to recommend the best places to go, that recommend the best apartments. Volume, frequency, quality, and response is what we talk about a lot, is what we're trying to focus on with those Google reviews. And I think by nature, you can't leave a review on Google if you don't have a Google account, and you can't leave multiple reviews from one Google account. So I think there are some protections with these public sites inherently just by how they operate when it comes with the verified and unverified. So we focus on that and think about it that way. But I do think, to your point, I think you can see it on some of these specific ILS sites of verified resident, unverified resident. What gets a little murky sometimes with Google is usernames or things like that, and you're not sure. I think where we tackle this is it's really important to be proactive and get as much content on there as possible, because people are going to come to their own conclusions and need to consume reviews at a frequent clip. So they'll come, whatever their past experiences are or whatever their experiences is with property management, they need that content to come to a conclusion. So I think the more we're really focused on being proactive for that reason, because one review verified, one unverified, we need more. And what we see in our data is that we don't do a great job of getting that frequency and getting those reviews coming in at a high level to be able to create that consensus. So beyond just one or two reviews, we want to create consensus and build content. And so I think that's how we think about it in that way as well. If that helps answer the question a little bit?
Yeah,
Or-
it does. It's
yeah.
definitely an open-ended question, but
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm also, I guess, excited, and nobody said this is actually happening, but it seems like we're headed this direction. And I was going to ask a pointed question about ChatGPT and how much it
Mhm.
has or hasn't disrupted your roadmap or enhanced it. But with reviews, where you can get kind of an unbiased summary
Mhm.
of those reviews. So it's like, yes, you have 16, negative reviews here, and you can click this button or easily like get just general summary of those concerns. Ideally, it's of both positive and negative, so that it's just a totally unbiased picture of like the reviews that are coming back, instead of reading one at a time and trying to decide for yourself, because that's a lot of effort. That's one reason I don't spend a ton of time on reviews, but I absolutely use them. But it's just like, after I get through a few, it's like I'm done. And
Yeah.
so it'd be nice to be able to easily use something like generative AI to just say, hey, we've looked at all these reviews for you, and here's kind of the general sentiment about this property, for
Yeah.
better or worse.
I could certainly see Google tackling that. And you see it a little bit when you search. They highlight the word, they show the relevant reviews first. They don't necessarily sort by newest. So when you search for something, they're highlighting it, what your search is in some of the comments in the reviews. So you definitely, I think you're spot on in that a summary, an unbiased summary. I mean, I sort by negative first often.
Yeah.
People I want to know what's going to go wrong. So I definitely think that is a natural part of next step of just summarizing this. Hey, here's what people love about it. Here's some issues that happen, and here's how they respond to those issues, which is where response comes in as well. So needing a lot of that content to be able to produce that type of summary. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, more one of my standard questions that I ask, especially with new, I'll call it vendors or technology or providers in multifamily, and it sounds like it's been a couple of years now for you guys. But how do you go about setting expectations with owners, operators, PMCs, your clients? So if I were to sign up with Widewail, what do you lead with? You talked offline a little bit with us about some of the valuable insights that you can bring to them, perhaps operationally, ways that they might be able to enhance, their experience, their living experience. So, obviously residents are more attracted, stay longer, rent goes up. But that's a little bit more long tail. So, just curious if you only had, a couple minutes to kind of talk through the ROI of Widewail for a multifamily operator, what would that sound like?
Yeah. So initially, a lot of times when folks are coming to us, they are like, all right, our Google score does not reflect what is actually happening. we need we need this to go up. So we often and we need to do this in a way that's not adding any burden to our on-site teams. It's too much to ask them. It's too much to ask them to chase down these reviews. It's too much to ask them to respond. So operationally, we need to get more efficient with getting more reviews online. So we talk about in the immediate is okay, then let's trigger off of these 4 life cycle stages: tour, move in, renewal, work order, complete. And what we typically tell them is, hey, you can expect, barring everything is running smoothly and you're confident in your operations, that these life cycle stage triggers are going to produce reviews over a 4.0. We see that in our system. We see anywhere from even a 4.5 to a 5. That's typically where these stages are rated. So we set those expectations that, hey, you can expect to see this from each life cycle stage, which will then in turn increase that Google rating. And the Google rating can be tricky, right? Because you could have a lease up, maybe they have 12 reviews. And so one 5-star review is going to move that needle. Or you could have a stabilized property that has changed hands 50 times and has 400 reviews. And so moving the rating is going to be a little bit more difficult. You're going to need more reviews to do that. So talking about those expectations, but we typically say, hey, yes, these moments are going to drive positivity, and here are the ratings you can expect. And it's going to be all automated and personalized to your on-site team using the PMS, so there's no more work. And then our team can tackle that response. So there's a mix of, yes, we're going to get more reviews in the interim and short term, but we're also going to help improve some operational efficiency there around responding and ensuring you're getting more.
And how much have you been able, I appreciate that, but connect it to quantifiable ROI for an owner? So the end goal here is to generate more reviews, more high rating, quality reviews. And it seems pretty intuitive that's going to bode well, right, for leasing and I suppose retention. But it can be a challenge for a lot of providers in this space that don't have the access to the data, I'll say, like the operational data, to know whether it did or didn't actually end up delivering on that ultimate goal. So I just didn't know, and I have a certain level of empathy here, because even for us, like, we are very much a lead gen, provider. I mean, there's lots of other things that we do, but we aren't always able to close the loop, on whether it ended up materializing, the way that everybody was hoping, or drove the ultimate outcome. So do you guys have a sense of that, or is it more like, hey, our job is just what we said: more reviews, good quality, high rating, and we all know that in the end should have a good outcome, but we won't necessarily be there to celebrate with you because we just don't have the data?
Jake, were you going to jump in? I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I think our job is to provide you with that information on the front end, and we have some great benchmarks data as well that we have recently put together to give any business, any group of communities, a level set for what's good and what's not within the review space, and then also provide them with that insight on the back end of what they need to be focusing on over time from a topic level to improve the communities and improve the resident experience over time. But I think that presenting that best foot forward, showing up higher in local search, all these things work together to change the narrative around the community.
For sure. I think the ultimate, David talks about strike zone in different ways you'll use that or apply that, but would be the ultimate. And we have a predictive marketing platform that we built that was trying to get at some of that, but it's like, so is it 75 reviews at a 4.4 star that you've now hit this threshold or milestone? Not that you automatically are going to raise rents, but just you're now in a much better position to benefit from all the work that we've done. Right now, I don't know if there is a strike zone. I mean, everybody just wants more reviews and at a higher rating, but to be able to, through data, say this is really the sweet spot, and then if you want to achieve yet another level, then this is where you need to be. Kind of like the LinkedIn profile, where it's like you're 80% optimized, but is there a point where there's diminishing returns, or the juice isn't worth the squeeze as far as all the effort around reviews and reputation management?
Yeah.
So I'm just talking out loud here, guys.
No, I think to your point of closing that loop of, okay, well, are we retaining more residents?
Right.
Are our rents, can we justify higher rents? And I think all of that is the next phase of this. And I think data, just as in general, as an industry, being able to share that data easily and be able to connect platforms and understand and close the loop. And I think, yeah, you nailed it. Empathy of, we see various elements of this, but closing the loop in terms of operationally and really the bottom line is definitely more difficult. I will say with the rating, Google, what we talk about a lot, and Jake mentioned it, was local search and Google. And we tell our clients and our prospects, you should strive to be above that 4.0 mark, because if you use the qualifier best in a search, best apartments, Denver, Google says, okay, they're looking for the best, and they automatically filter out anything below a 4.0. So you're losing some visibility opportunity there right off the bat. So that's where we talk about a lot about that optimal rating. And then from there, frequency of reviews. But when we do talk about that rating, and you mentioned kind of that, where is that line from a local search standpoint, it certainly is above that 4.0.
Yep.
That's super. That's a great tip there. Is there anything that you're aware of as far as like they need a certain number of reviews and for something like that sort of indicator? So like if you have less than 10, but it's 5 stars, they still might not like show you. I'm just wondering if you guys have anything on that.
It's super localized. You can't really compare necessarily any two communities to one another because it's within their unique competitive set of, if you're searching for an apartment near me, what would come up in your local market. And it's vastly different by industry as well. So in multifamily, the average community generates 1.6 new Google reviews a month. Compare that to automotive, where it's 10.4, so almost 10x, 8, 9x the amount of review volume going through a car dealership versus an apartment complex. And there are hundreds of dealerships doing hundreds of reviews a month, 100, 200 reviews a month. So I think multifamily is at this place where it needs more activity. It's just like, let's get the train rolling. We need more review volume coming in to really see what it looks like and what residents are saying. But so much of the resident ecosystem, the resident base, is not participating. And that's a lot of what we try to achieve, is to help groups and communities pull these insights out of their residents that had a good experience, but are the silent, happy majority that are, you guys have experienced this a ton. I'm sure you go to get your clothes dry cleaned and they did a good job. They did it on time. They gave you a breath mint, and they, you didn't lose your ticket slip, and you grab your clothes and you say goodbye, and it was what you expect it to cost, and you move on with your day. And if that dry cleaner doesn't ask you for a review, then you're not going to leave a review because they did their job. They did what they were supposed to. But it doesn't mean you had a bad experience. Whereas if they spill coffee on your clothes and there's still wrinkles and it was way more expensive than it should have been, then you have this natural motivation to be a good Samaritan and to set the narrative straight. So there's the natural motivation of those that are unhappy needs to be counteracted by encouragement of the broader masses, which tends to be the majority, which is why we see ratings go up when more review activity comes down the pipe.
Yeah, this is why I'm doing this interview in my underpants, because I never want to have to use the dry cleaner and maybe have to leave them a review.
I wish I could say he was lying, but
unless they're on our YouTube channel, they'll never know.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what do you think, Jake, is motivating automotive purchasers, consumers to 10x the number of reviews that multifamily is? I think there's something about volume, and Dave and I both have experience in automotive, so that also is very dependent on the market, the model, the size of the dealer, whatever. But I don't think they're that far apart just as far as opportunities. So 10x could be misleading, right? If it's just like, well, there's also 1,000 people buying, and then there's only like 100 that are churning each month in apartments, so therefore it's not a great thing to compare against. But I think it actually is close enough, and you may be able to fill that in a little bit more. But you seem pretty convinced that generally automotive consumers or purchases come with a lot more reviews than multifamily. So any theories on why there's such a big gap between the two?
I think there's a few theories. And I think there's always going to be a gap. Katie and I talk about this quite a bit, that multifamily naturally is fighting more of an uphill fight than automotive for a couple pretty fundamental reasons. And generally, it's more or less the same cohort of people. Like people who are renting apartments likely need to buy a car and vice versa. So it's not necessarily like it can't be done, but I think the volume of transactions in the case of automotive is huge, especially considering service transactions happen on a monthly basis. So between buying cars and servicing cars, there's a lot of opportunity, and the amount of review volume is very much reliant on the opportunity. Beyond that, I think that the automotive industry seems to be a little bit more mature in its adoption of reputation management. I'd put it a few years ahead. I've been working in both for a handful of years now. And when I have conversations within multifamily, it's talking about core review concepts and kind of figuring out what the ideal move is now. In automotive, it's like everyone has a vendor in place already. They have a strategy in place, and they're looking to optimize it that little bit further. So there's a little bit more of, it's like a built-in process within automotive, and it's a little bit less entrenched within multifamily from what I've seen. Which kind of brings us to life cycle stage is so key. Expanding your universe of reviewable events within multifamily is the key to success. There's never going to be as much opportunity as automotive because you have a finite set of residents at any one moment in time. So you have to really optimize your system to get as much content out of that set of residents by focusing on different life cycle stages. Especially early on, I think the tour stage is the one really opportunity for huge growth. We see it accounts for roughly 60% of review invites within our system. The volume is huge there compared to everything else. If you don't turn on tour, you're just shutting off over half of your opportunity. And those tend to be the highest rate. That's the highest rated life cycle stage from what we see as well. So figuring out how to best take advantage of every single opportunity is very important in multifamily, and not letting human error get in the way of anything, because you don't have a finite amount of opportunities to generate feedback.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there is that element of finite in particular in a lease up scenario. But when you do have an asset, that has been online for 5-10 years, stabilized property, to me, there is typically, I mean, we see 50% churn. So there's quite a few that are coming in and out, from 1 month to the next. And speaking to those opportunities, you mentioned service with automotive in addition to the purchase. It would seem that with multifamily, there's constantly maintenance requests being put in by residents all over, the community, and that's a golden opportunity for them. Like if, that's done well, right? It's like, hey, this person came and fixed my toilet and they did an amazing job. They were super great. Like, boom, like try to get a review right then.
Yep.
And then all the interaction that a property manager has often, I mean, there's plenty with the resident over the course of their 12 months, where they might, be helping them with some packages or giving them some advice on some restaurants in the area, whatever it is. But I'm trying to highlight that I think there's way more touch points maybe than multifamily is recognizing for them to up their reviews. It's not as simple as it's an offboard or when you onboard them. There actually is quite a bit of interaction happening in between that it seems like you could capitalize the way automotive has with the service example you gave.
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it. And I'm vigorously nodding my head here because the maintenance is one, and Jacob, we were talking about this earlier, but one of the lower rated life cycle stages based on the Google review study we did. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going poorly. I think it means that we're not necessarily capitalizing on that life cycle stage. And it might be internal surveys. It might be you might see in your survey that things are going well, but if your prospects and residents don't see that publicly, then it's it's not influencing, it is influencing their decisions, whereas the survey data is not, because no one sees it. So I think there is this golden opportunity to increase the quote unquote transaction volume through maintenance and resident events, things you've put time and effort into, to ask for those reviews and expand our definition of, okay, what is a reviewable event? And let's really plan out these touch points and figure out when to ask. And that's what we're hoping some of this data solves for as well, is, hey, here's where you should ask. Here's where you have the best chance of getting those positive reviews, and where things can go well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to David. I'm sure he's got a few questions, but I want to make sure I get to ask one about scalability for Widewail itself. Hearing that there's a big human element, if that's not a key piece of your recipe, and how you differentiate yourself from just the full AI rep management that we're seeing more and more of. But
let's go there. I think that's a little bit of a of a counter positioning, where it sounds like you guys still have service as a big component of your offering versus, as you said, try to solve everything with tech. So if you guys would just elaborate on that more and how that sets you guys apart.
Yeah. Widewail has always been a services first business. I think that was how we started, and it gave us, we're not fully bootstrapped, but it's like a variation on bootstrapped. The reality is that AI is good for many number of things, and we're cautious in how we implement it in order to ensure the best output of result for our customers. So we don't rush into sacrificing that, and we are not just development software only, full steam ahead. We think more holistically. It plays a large role in the level of customer service we're able to provide to our clients, and it's been a driver of a lot of great things for our business. Is making the investment in a little bit higher touch services, a little bit more time, and we don't have a full customer support apparatus that a lot of businesses have. We have a smaller team, and then we have our review response team, which is half managed services, half customer support, and kind of is always working directly with our customers. So it gives us a number of good interactions on a regular basis, which then creates a solid foundation which we can build and add on technology and efficiency on top of that.
So Katie, when you're talking to property management companies, let me give you what I've experienced in the past when it comes to rep management, and then you tell me, you can fill in the gaps. But they have one GL line item that's like, hey, I need to handle my reviews. Yeah. Now, oftentimes they might also have a second one that's like, I need local SEO for citations. Now, so I'd love you to comment on how important it is for them to combine those two together, where it's you have the same sort of software stack, if you will, doing local listings as well as rep management. Because I think this is where the waters get muddied on someone's pro forma. Yeah. But then separately, it seems to me that many of them are asking their leasing team, to handle the review response. But then they often find that there's not high compliance. So they're not actually, as Jake, you were saying, they get 1.6 reviews a month. It's not happening often. So it seems like, an on-site person should be able to respond to this review. However, because it's not happening often, it's just not something that's forth of mind to be I need to respond to that Google review or apartment ratings review. So therefore, it seems like there's big opportunity here to centralize and make sure you have great compliance on the way that these reviews are being handled and responded to in a timely fashion. And that's where I think your service component would fit in. However, because of the industry with their pro forma sort of being well, I'm used to paying X amount for whatever, often adding a service component means it's a little bit more expensive because you have humans you have to account for, and therefore you fall out of their normal GL thing. And as cool as you guys are with automate connecting automatically to Entrata or AppFolio or whatever, and then being able to automate these triggers and jump the reviews up, a lot of times they're man, I got other investments I'm trying to fight, and fighting for a few more bucks on this is not worth the conversation compared to this other thing I'm trying to get pushed through. Yeah. So anyways, Katie, how much of that's true? And then, how do you end up winning?
It's great question. So Usually what I go to is we are built for incredibly high volume industry from an incredibly high volume industry. So it actually ends up being not that much more expensive because we already know how to handle an incredibly high amount of transactions in a month. So we do month to month pricing, and so it ends up being a single community. Their volume is not necessarily, it's not even really close to what a single dealership volume is. So in terms of cost and pricing, we've figured out how to handle these interactions at scale. So it doesn't end up being a premium just because this is what we do, and this is what we were built off of. The interesting to your point about centralizing and the uniformity around the managed service, I think what I hear more and more, and how we win is, we'll use third party as an example. We're hearing from ownership that our responses are templated or the same, or there's not a unique element to them at all. And I think you can tell if you go read responses, you can tell this was a template. They use like a first and last name, and it's the same, and it's very similar as you go scroll through the content. And so where people tend to really like and are willing to say, okay, yeah, we do want humans reading these. We do want humans interacting with our residents and just acting as an extension of our team that we don't have to train over and over and over again if there's turnover at the property. And so I think when we talk about centralization, and you mentioned it earlier, I think it was Reed saying, this isn't just about improving margin. A lot of times just adding AI is about let's cut costs. We also need to improve operations and improve what we're doing. And so that's where, yes, we're going to make things easier by centralizing all of this and having one team, but we're not going to lose the human touch, because there is something to be said for that. And people want to make sure that they're responding to these reviews. And we have workflows in place to ask for input and make sure that some of the negative reviews are being addressed uniquely. I think part of negative reviews are never fun, but the response to them can really influence not just the reviewer, but the folks who are reading those reviews as well. They want to know, like, okay, if something goes wrong, what's the next step here? Did they fix it? Is this in progress? Did the laundry person come? Did they, was this fixed? And I think there's a really unique opportunity in those responses to be able to showcase the work that you're doing. So I think that's where we talk a lot about is sure, maybe it's not just a self-serve response solution. We're making things more efficient for your on-site team and still having that human element.
Cool. And then how about that thread on citations with rep management?
Yeah, so we actually added a listings product for that reason. So it tends to fall hand in hand when we're managing and the Google Business Profile anyway. So I do think that there is this effort to examine a tech stack and consolidate where folks can. So it does tend to, it's one of the first questions I get is, do you manage our listings as well? And so it tends to be top of mind for folks that those two things are in one line item. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Although I am experiencing more other platforms kind of adding citations as part of the like, hey, this is free, and that's happened a lot with in this space where you have these large platforms that start adding, like, I'll say subpar options as free, but to help make you sticky. And what that ends up doing is causing a lot of complication because it doesn't do it super well because that's not their main business. And then therefore it ends up, I've witnessed properties that have 3 different systems that are updating their hours and address and stuff and overriding tracking numbers. And so then it creates a whole different issue because I say everyone, but many of these platforms by default are handling citations automatically.
Yeah. It's so true. And we talk a lot about that in terms of being thoughtful with the product roadmap, and that we're not going to try to be someone we're not here. And we want to excel at this, at reputation management and supporting our clients with that. And I think you see companies with a million different products, and some are, they have their core competencies, but these add-on products might just not cut it. So certainly agree with you there, and that it's definitely makes sense as operators to dive in and understand exactly what is this? What is listings? What is citations? What does it actually do? Because you do have those competing products for sure.
So I want to move into, I want to recognize you guys, because I think there are more folks in the industry that I'm witnessing are now starting for multifamily thinking about the customer experience or the client journey. And so there are these new platforms and tools getting rolled out to help collect opinions from different folks, like through the different parts of their life cycle. But many of those are more, I'll say, behind the scenes versus like publishing the reviews. So what I think is really interesting about you guys is that you guys have, you're doing a lot of analysis of you're helping generate reviews, and then you're helping analyze those reviews to then determine like what's going well and maybe not so well, where there's opportunity in the client or customer journey. And one of the things you guys recently published was that the number one thing that is mentioned when someone has a positive experience is staff. And it looks like that's 4 times more likely than anything else. So 60% of the time, am I reading this correctly? 60% of the time, if it's a positive review, it's the staff gets mentioned?
Yeah. So staff or on-site teams are mentioned in 60% of positive reviews. So I'll kind of give some background on the data. 5 years ago, we started a kernel of what this would become, working with a PhD student who did a research of 10,000 reviews, and we thought we were doing amazing work back then. And that came and went, and with the recent technology that we've developed, and now the incorporation of ChatGPT, AI topic sentiment analysis tools, has unlocked this whole world of opportunity for us. So for this data set within multifamily, we've collected 400,000 Google reviews from the last 12 months, and then gone through that with topic of sentiment analysis tools, and we can go through and learn a lot about what residents are saying in public. We selected 49 topics that were most often mentioned and most often talked about. And from there, we can split them into, okay, which topics are mentioned in positive reviews, which topics are mentioned in negative reviews. On the positive side, it's your on-site team. And I think this sort of begs the conversation about AI and how we think about AI as it relates to this information. But I've never seen a spread quite like this. On-site teams are mentioned in 60% of reviews, and the most often mentioned second topic is location at 16%. So the experience that any resident is having with your on-site team is by far the most influential engagement they're going to have. On the flip side, maintenance leads the way on the negative side. So within negative reviews, maintenance is most often mentioned at around 35%, 34%. Which I think Katie would back this up. I think it's, like you said, it's a frequent touch point that needs to be and could be better utilized as a source of reviews for multifamily communities. I think it's sort of a topic that's most likely to generate negative organic feedback that hasn't fully been realized in its opportunity to generate positive feedback. I suspect if we have this conversation 2 years from now, maintenance will be doing a lot better as the rise of more sophistication within reputation management grows, and people are targeting maintenance and pulling in more positive feedback from that because they're activating more individuals within the community.
And Jake, did you pick 49 topics just to make me antsy about why it's not 50 topics?
Yeah, you'll have to take that up with our data science team. I honestly have no idea.
Just seems like we could just, if we're going to go to 49, let's go ahead and make it top 50.
It's very random. I agree.
Cool. Well, I'd also be curious to learn here. What did you guys find as far as what we think matters a lot, but doesn't actually matter a lot? So, yeah, do you guys have anything there where it may be surprising findings?
We do, yeah. Let's see. I love this conversation. It seems to be the same thing that I've had many times before. It's like, what's this shiny new object? What's actually influencing your residents? And technology of many different types seems to fit the bill. So let's see, technology, online virtual viewing, anything along those lines is mentioned in less than 1% of reviews. So scheduling technologies is a good one. I think it's not to say that these things are not valuable to communities, but if your goal is solely to generate positive reviews, these are not going to move the needle. So if you really want to optimize your reputation, it's setting your on-site team up for success so that they can do their main primary job of great resident experience face-to-face the best that they possibly can, and sort of removing any distractions from around that interaction. That's most likely the number one way you're going to drive your reputation up. And then figuring out a process that's going to pull more positivity out of the maintenance lifecycle stage. Those two things are the main levers that operators can pull to influence their reputation. Anything you would add to that, Katie?
One thing that I love, a distinction that I love, is you can see maintenance on the top of the list for negatives, but then you see maintenance staff in the top 3 for positives. And I think the what we think is, okay, they just need their sink fixed. And I think with communication on top of that negative, maybe it's not they just need their sink fixed. They just need an update on when their sink is going to be fixed, or they know that someone's on it. I think the positive reviews are the difference between, I had a great experience with Katie. They didn't have the part, but then Katie let us know that they ordered it and it was coming in a week. And then Katie came in and fixed it and it was great. And, the person made that experience, and the communication and the updates made that experience positive versus just, oh, my sink was fixed in a week. And so often with the negatives, they're talking about maintenance as a whole, not necessarily maintenance as a person. So I think maintenance folks being stewards of customer service, and probably the people who interact with residents more so than property managers, as being a huge driver of that positivity and making an excellent experience, making an experience where maybe something isn't coming in on time, but they're communicating and constantly updating them. And maybe that's where some AI can come in of just the progress bar, something as an example. But that was just something that stood out to me of it's not just about getting this fixed. It's about communicating through it, and the people who are fixing it are delivering that great experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. I think, Jake, I liked your point about, hey, it's not that this stuff doesn't matter. It just means if you're trying to drive reviews, this is where you'd focus. So I'll try to illustrate that a bit. But in this industry, what we found is that when choosing an apartment, the top 3 things that matter are price, pets, and location. And location is mentioned in your positive experience, number 2. And there's not a lot anybody can do about that, right? It's like location is what it is. So, but yet it's mentioned. And yet when you look at rent and pricing and pets, those are all like under 3% as far as as making a positive impact. So you could also take that, Jake, to maybe build on where's their opportunity. So we have a lot of properties that are putting in, self-cleaning pet parks, or like agility stations or whatever, like pet wash. And those are more opportunities where you could be like, oh, you use the pet wash again. Could you leave a review? Right. Because it is something that matters a lot when they're deciding to get a place, but it's not currently one that's ranking high as far as why people are leaving reviews. So I just think that there's a lot from the analysis you guys have done. To me, it just lends to both say, great, so do we not care about it because it doesn't drive reviews? Or in this case, like virtual tours or self-guided tours are something that matter operationally for operational efficiency so that they don't have to staff all the time, but it's not going to drive reviews. That's fine. But then again, pets is something that does drive people deciding to move in or really that they filter you out. And we're not getting a lot of mentions of that. Therefore, how can we get more mentions of pets?
Yeah, I think you have to take the context of when a review comes into play, which is usually after an experience has happened or after a decision has been made. So they've already vetted the community for the pets and the price point is appropriate for what they need. It seems unlikely that they're going to be gouged on their rent and still go through it and then complain about that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's a certain amount of expectation setting that is built into the process that limits the exposure. But there's two ways to win here. You can maximize your positivity, but you can also minimize your negativity. And we see topics like rent and pricing come up significantly more in negative reviews. So working to a win doesn't necessarily mean it has to be raised up in its positive mention, but it also can be brought down in its negative mentions. So there's those components there. You know, what can be maximized in positive, minimized in negative, and what is purposefully not said, but not necessarily a bad thing that is left out.
Well, Reed, before we wrap up, what topics you want to make sure we get in?
Well, I had a bunch.
Okay.
So I'm trying to be judicious here on which ones I wrap up with. But a simple one that I've never asked, I don't think you have either, David. I didn't hear you mention, Katie, that you're doing anything with student housing or senior. Is it just multifamily?
Primarily multifamily. We do have some student housing portfolios, but it's our primary basis, multifamily.
Yeah. Well, the question that was going to follow, if you said, yeah, we do a little in all three, is who's most likely to generate a review? Is it a multifamily resident, a student resident, or a senior housing? So have you guys learned that, even if it were in automotive, but just I'm getting it like, do you have a profile? Is there any kind of upfront profiling? It's like, oh, we just brought in 30 new residents and we now know, having worked with Widewail or others, that these 5 are most likely to try and to generate. And maybe I'm saying things I shouldn't as far as profiling, and that kind of stuff. But just because I don't think I would be a very good target, and I already know David wouldn't. I think we've left 1 review each in the last 10 years, like total. So why waste your time with us if there's some way for you to know up front? So that seems like some valuable coaching potentially to an on-site team. It's like generally, there are those that are more prone versus those that aren't, and they kind of look and sound like this, but I could be completely saying or suggesting some things that you shouldn't. But I didn't know if you could even generally say that students are more likely to leave a review than a multifamily resident, or I'll say, more elderly senior housing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in terms of the profile, I don't think we have enough data from the PMS. We just grab what we need to send that SMS. So in terms of the profile of person, no, but that is an interesting concept of, we can say, hey, here are the life cycle stage where people are most likely to leave a review. But I would say I do think folks in the multifamily industry, I have heard with our student housing clients that it is a little bit more difficult to get them to leave a review, which is interesting because you would think that generation, really tech savvy, they're relying on these reviews. They're trying to create that experience with each other and connect with each other. So I would say without having a ton of data, that multifamily is probably the leader of the pack there. What's really interesting about the senior living element of it, we do have a couple senior living clients, but another element of what we do is video testimonials. And we did this in automotive, and we were floored at the demographic that chose to leave a video testimonial. Like, it was the older generation. And Jake, you can back me up here. That was really surprising to me. I think our first video was this older gentleman, nicest guy in the world, like a 2-minute video on his laptop talking about his wonderful experience. So that, I thought that was really interesting. And that's something that surprised me. And that's a little more anecdotal, but I do think that there is an opportunity in senior living for folks to engage as well.
At least it was on a laptop and not a camcorder.
Yeah, that's true. That's
8 millimeter sent in.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, when it comes to engagement on human versus non-human, if you guys have been able to extract any data, so one of the things we're hearing more and more with the chat GPT bots and stuff is, and I forget if there's a name for that test or that threshold, but where they're trying to get as far as being able to recognize it being a bot versus a human.
The Turing test.
What is it?
The Turing test.
Yeah, the Turing test.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you guys have any data related to that. It's not meaning do they know that you're a human or not, but wouldn't that be unfortunate, right? Is like, you guys have this amazing human response. You put the effort into, as you said, training, coaching, them to be great with their responses, and they're getting. Well, you're not getting credit. So I just didn't know if you have anything to point to there as far as staying with this recipe of human response and not letting AI take the lead. And is there any data or validation to that business model for you guys when it comes to either, well, I guess this is less about generating as much as it is to responding to reviews. So I'll let you answer that. And if there's not much to share there, no big deal. But my follow-up to that, I'll just give you a heads up, is what's the value of generating versus responding to reviews? It seems overwhelmingly to me, it's about generating, not responding. So if it were like a pie chart, would you say really it's 90% of the effort and focus should be on generating quality, good reviews versus how much energy and effort we should be putting into the response? Because generally it seems like on a response, you don't get another response back from the person that logged it. It's just kind of like, you're acknowledging, we heard you, here's, we're showing some empathy and here's some thoughts, whatever. But it just seems like the thread dies almost always after that, I'll say resident leaves a review. So therefore, how much time and effort should you put on response versus generation?
So I think this reminds me of what you were talking about earlier, trying to tackle how do we handle fraudulent reviews and the verification test and those ideas. I think the response is your one opportunity to tell your side of the story and to present your business as a human. And I think how you described how you interact with reviews is what the research proves, that the majority of people interact with reviews. The stats, it's the vast majority of reviews consumed are within the last month. So reviews have a very short half-life. Their value to the business is a function of how many reviews you're creating, and I guess your ability to fill up the fold or two screenfuls worth of reviews. And that's generally what people are looking at. And then they move on. They make a quick gut assessment of if your business is good or not. And you always want to keep the hopper full. So you have three components. You have your rating that gives some general sense of quality. You have your volume, which is your popularity rating. And then you have the content within your reviews that gives additional context to those numbers. So the first two numbers get the door open, and then the information is what actually seals the deal, yay or nay. Responding to those reviews is the time that your business takes, yes, to thank the customer leaving the review, but to also, it's really mostly about any future prospects that are reading that content and looking authentic, telling your side of the story, even on negative reviews, your ability to act appropriately and professionally. People want to know how you're going to handle a bad situation. We're all human. It happens. People understand this, but you need to put something out there that proves we're not going to be a jerk. We're not going to tell you to pound sand and turn you away and be super rude. We're going to try to solve this for you. So it is a lot of effort to respond to reviews, but I think there's this intangible human element to it, where it's that final check mark before someone clicks the website, goes through the next step, digs deeper, that says they care, they treat their customers well, they're doing this simple thing. It's, the first filter that they pass through as they move on. And it also adds this air of authenticity and reality to your reviews that you'll get some of generating reviews, but it's not always going to fully seal the deal.
From moving the needle in terms of rating and frequency, absolutely, you're spot on with generating reviews is one of the first things we talk about. Like, this is what you should tackle. I think where the magic really happens with response is we always recommend giving a next step and working with the on-site or corporate teams of what is this next step? And when that next step matches up with reality, like, oh, someone actually did pick up my phone call and they solved this issue, we often actually see sometimes they go back and change it. And so when the response matches the operation and they're in sync there, then that's really where we see some of that, the impact of that response. Is this wasn't just a canned response to get me to go submit a form somewhere. I actually talked to a person. There's an interesting study. Harvard Business did a study, and they took a look at two groups of hotels on TripAdvisor, and one group was responding and one group wasn't. And the group that was responding, they actually had their rating was 0.12 stars higher, and they got 12% more reviews. And I think there's the hypothesis there, and the thesis was that if people see that there's someone there telling the business's side of the story, the unchecked sort of out into the ethos review that may not be totally factual is tempered a little bit, because people know that there's someone there to verify what they're saying. And so it's that idea of like, well, if someone's in the room, my parents in the room, maybe I'm not going to swear. You check your behavior a little bit because you see someone there, not just a template actually verifying those reviews. And so that was some of that came to mind just as we were talking about response. Was we talked a lot about this study and how.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to give you a chance to answer the first question, because that was a pretty hefty back to back, but it was about the chat GPT and how that's affecting what sounds like one of your biggest differentiators, which is the human response. So if AI is at a point where it's regularly hitting that Turing, threshold, right, of 98%, then isn't that cause for concern? If you're trying to, emphasize the human element here and what we do. And I don't think it's that simple. I'm just trying to tee you guys up a little bit, but if it's getting that good at conversational content communication,
right.
And it's like, well, that's our USP, is that we have humans that do this, but now we're talking about a 2% delta.
I would say two things stand out for me. The dynamic between review to review. So as you're reading down a list of reviews, there's this sequential order that would, in an automated context, are presented to an AI independently. So there's this sort of cohabitation of two pieces of review content. And if you have any repetition between your responses, it starts to look fake. And that's a challenging problem to solve with AI right now. And the second part is the amount of content available. Like if you upload a 10-page report to ChatGPT and tell it to summarize, it does a good job. But a review is 3 or 4 sentences. There's not that much context or content there for it to grab onto and iterate and evolve off of. And then the ability of the business to leverage responses to its benefit. So personalization, using keywords specific to the business, location specific keywords, various things, industry specific information, knowing that it's a studio floor plan versus a 2-bedroom, or it has a balcony that is west facing. A lot of these much more detailed industry specific nuances are risky. They're just risky to try to leave to the AI. It's not that it can't be done, but we don't recommend doing it without human support.
I think those are some great points, because 98% isn't like it's not that simple, so that's some basic testing right now that you're hearing about or seeing with ChatGPT, but it doesn't provide the context you just did relative to the amount of information it's getting, or, keyword nuances, things specific to an asset that, if it doesn't have that data ingested, then it's not going to be able to incorporate that into a response. So I think those are great call outs. I'm good for now.
All right, cool. Well, what else? I know we've kind of taken you guys long here. What else do you guys want to make sure we hit before we let you go?
Jake, you want to talk about the upcoming series here?
Yeah. We talked about started to tease a lot of our research related to reviews, and we're running a series throughout the spring. We're calling The Voice of the Resident, where we're going to go much deeper into what reviews can teach the industry about its residents. So our first one is May 9th at 3 p.m. And for the first event, we're going to look at the tour move-in stage. We're doing 3 events: tour, residency, and retention is how we're going to split it up. And we'll look at that information in 3 different stages. So for signing up for that event, widewail.com/data, or it's in the revised community as well if you guys are members there. And we're super excited about that. And that sort of leads us into, are you guys going to be at NAA? Oh, I know we're going to be at MME together. So excited to meet you guys there.
Yep.
You guys are both going to be there? Okay, perfect.
Awesome.
We'll be there. Yeah.
And then,
go ahead.
And
Jake.
then leading into NAA, we're going to release the brand scorecard, which will be looking at the NMHC top 50 and doing more specific analysis and comparison of specific groups, which I think will be new and novel for the industry.
Is that going to be your version, if you will, of the Aura score?
Yeah, okay. A little bit. We'll use that. And I think the main difference is just being really clear about what we're using for metrics, and it's going to be Google review metrics. And this is exactly what's going into the score. And this is how heavily we're weighting each topic or each metric, and give that online reputation score. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I was going to bring it up. We just were running out of time. It just seems like Jay Turner has done a lot of great work, sort of like making that their own. Kind of, I think of it like the Corcoran report from Barbara Corcoran when she was doing real estate. So I think it's awesome. But I have heard a lot of gripes over the years from clients that say, I don't know how to influence that. So they have these owners that, are very, tied into how they perceive their building to be performing, and they don't get those owners don't get to talk to residents really. So they look at reviews or their ORM score or whatever, and then then they make a judgment on the management company. And so the management companies do care a lot about that score, but then often they don't know how to influence it. So that's great that there will be another resource out there. I kind of view it similar to, like, yes, you have Zillow's estimate, but then Redfin has its, and
totally
Realtor.com has theirs. And so you have multiple data points you can use to kind of like triangulate, on, are we doing a great job or not? So I think it'll be great to have you guys as an option there.
Yeah, I think the work that they've done to have a score is fantastic. I think it's so important for a lot of these groups. And so I think, having many complementary scores to paint a picture, a holistic picture is great. So yeah, definitely excited.
Great. So it sounds like if folks want to learn more, they can go to your website. And then also you've got a lot of content on there that you guys have produced, different audio and video and white papers and whatnot. So if they're interested, there's a lot of free content that they could be getting from you just to help educate themselves, about the data that you guys have been looking at.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Normally I would have asked this up front, but I have to know, maybe I'm missing a metaphor here, but where did Widewail come from?
It's the corduroys from the 90s have a wide.
I'm already loving this.
whale,
When I asked this question. You have to start with corduroys.
Oh, Jake, I didn't know you were going to go there.
It was sort of this pant style from the 90s that our boss liked. I don't know. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but that became his Xbox handle for about 15 years. And then he was looking for a URL in 2018, and widewail.com was available. And
Nice.
So here we are.
I will plug that he also wanted to start a band and name it Widewail. He's got some musical talent in him, and when that didn't pan out, he used the name for the business.
Well, at least he has that to fall back on.
Yeah, exactly.
And let's make sure everybody knows it's Whale, WAIL, not WHALE.
And is this Matt that you're talking about?
Matt Murray,
Matt. Yeah.
Okay, so originally Matt was going to be on here, but then we had too many guests, so you guys kicked him off because you said you're not important enough. But now,
That's
when
correct.
I see Matt at NAA or whatever, I'll ask him about these Widewail. Actually,
I plan on wearing them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I expect to see them in the flesh.
And he better immediately grab me and say, "You my man."
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for the open conversation. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing the next set of research that you guys publish.